The sun beat down mercilessly on the Arizona territory as Rebecca Mitchell stood before the settlement elders, her hands bound but her spirit unbroken. The verdict was swift and cruel. She would be given to Chief Tal Eagle as retribution. While the settlers expected her death, the Apache chief saw something different. Not a prisoner to punish, but a woman whose courage mirrored the ancient strength of his people. Instead of the cruelty she expected, he offered respect. Instead of captivity, he offered a place at his side. Could a woman torn from her world find not just survival, but love in the arms of the man she was taught to fear? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over Cottonwood Creek settlement, painting the modest wooden structures in hues of amber and gold. Rebecca Mitchell had been awake for hours already, grinding dried yarrow flowers in her mother's worn mortar. The leather-bound diary that had belonged to her father sat open beside her, its pages filled with his meticulous observations of the territory, the increasing tensions with the Apache, and in the early pages, loving descriptions of her mother. Rebecca paused her work to touch the silver locket around her neck, the one treasure she had of Eleanor Mitchell, who had passed when Rebecca was just 12. Inside was a small portrait, faded but precious, of a woman with the same auburn hair and determined green eyes that Rebecca saw in her own reflection. "Rebecca," Thomas Mitchell's weathered voice called from outside. "Jeremiah's boy is here. Says his sister's fever hasn't broken. Coming, father." Rebecca quickly wrapped the ground yarrow in a clean cloth and reached for her medicine basket. Thomas Mitchell stood in the doorway, his tall frame stooped slightly from years of working the land. At 53, his once brown hair had turned mostly gray, and the lines around his eyes had deepened since Eleanor's death. He managed a small smile as Rebecca approached, but worry clouded his features. "Third case this week," he said quietly. "People are starting to talk. Say it's the Apache putting curses on our water." Rebecca sighed. "It's not curses, father. It's the drought. The creek's running low, and the water's stagnant. I've told everyone to boil it thoroughly." "Some folks would rather blame the Apache than their own carelessness," Thomas agreed, helping her mount their old mare. "Be careful on the north path. There's been talk of Apache scouts near the ridge." Rebecca nodded, though she felt no fear at the mention of the native tribe. Unlike most settlers, she had observed the Apache from afar many times, watching their healing rituals with curiosity rather than dread. Their knowledge of local plants far surpassed anything in her mother's old medical books from back east. As she rode through the settlement, Rebecca nodded to neighbors who regarded her with a mixture of respect and unease. At 22, unmarried and serving as the settlement's unofficial healer, she defied the expectations for a woman in the territory. Some mothers warned their daughters not to become like odd Rebecca Mitchell, while secretly calling for her when illness struck their homes. The Blackwood house stood apart from the others, larger and more ornate, with glass windows imported at great expense. Samuel Blackwood had arrived 3 years ago with money from mysterious Eastern connections and had quickly established himself as the settlement's most influential resident. At 40, he remained unmarried, though not for lack of trying to court Rebecca. As she passed, Blackwood himself emerged onto his porch. His neatly trimmed beard and expensive clothes set him apart from the other settlers. "Miss Mitchell," he called, tipping his hat. "Another house call. You work too hard for a lady of your refinement." "Good morning, Miss Blackwood," Rebecca replied coolly. "Duty calls, indeed." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps you'll join me for supper soon. I've received some fine tea from St. Louis. Perhaps another time. The Cooper girl needs attention." Blackwood's expression hardened slightly before he forced another smile. "Of course. Another time." As Rebecca rode on, she couldn't shake the unease that Blackwood always stirred in her. Behind his polite veneer lay something calculating and cold. The Cooper homestead was at the settlement's edge, closest to the disputed territories where Apache and settler claims overlapped. Little Sarah Cooper had been ill for 3 days, her fever refusing to break despite Rebecca's previous treatment. After an hour of applying cool compresses and administering a stronger willow bark tea, Sarah's fever finally began to subside. Rebecca left additional medicine and strict instructions with Sarah's grateful mother before beginning her journey home. Instead of taking the main path, Rebecca guided her mare toward the ridge that overlooked the valley. She'd seen smoke rising from that direction earlier, suggesting an Apache encampment. Her father would be furious if he knew, but Rebecca's curiosity about their healing ways overrode her caution. From a hidden vantage point, she observed several Apache women working with plants she recognized, and others she didn't. Their methodical preparation and evident knowledge fascinated her. If only the two peoples could share such wisdom instead of trading threats and gunfire. The sudden sound of approaching horses sent Rebecca ducking behind a boulder. Below, 3 riders approached the Apache camp, not Apache themselves, but white men. With a start, Rebecca recognized Blackwood's foreman and 2 of his ranch hands. They rode with purpose toward a small stream that fed into the valley, the same stream that provided water to both the Apache camp and eventually to Cottonwood Creek settlement itself. Rebecca watched in horror as one man stood guard while the others poured something from a large jug into the stream. With a cold shock of realization, Rebecca understood why illness had been spreading. Not Apache curses, but deliberate poisoning, and not just of the Apache water, but of the settlement's source as well. Blackwood's men were creating a crisis to inflame tensions that already burned dangerously hot. Rebecca clutched her mother's silver locket, heart pounding. What she had just witnessed could start a war or stop one, but either way, keeping silent was no longer an option. Rebecca's mare sensed her tension and shifted nervously. She stroked the animal's neck to quiet her, while keeping her eyes fixed on Blackwood's men. They were now leading away 3 Apache horses, valuable animals that would certainly be missed. The theft, combined with the poisoned water, would provide exactly the provocation Blackwood seemed to want. On her bedside table back home sat the small carved wooden horse her father had made for her 10th birthday. "Stubborn as this little filly," he'd said with rare affection. That stubbornness now pushed Rebecca to action before wisdom could intervene. She waited until Blackwood's men disappeared around the bend, before carefully making her way down toward the stream. The Apache camp appeared temporarily deserted. Likely the men were hunting, and the women gathering plants further downstream. This might be her only chance. Rebecca approached the stream and examined the water. An oily film coated the surface, giving off a faint acrid smell. She couldn't undo the poisoning that had already occurred, but she could warn the Apache about the contamination and perhaps prevent further illness. A rustling sound made her freeze. Turning slowly, Rebecca found herself facing an elderly Apache woman who had emerged silently from the trees. They stared at each other, neither moving. "Water," Rebecca said slowly, pointing to the stream. "Bad. Poison." She mimicked drinking and then clutching her stomach in pain. The woman's weathered face remained impassive, but her dark eyes studied Rebecca intently. Rebecca tried again, dipping her finger in the water, and then making a slashing motion across her throat. "Men," she pointed in the direction Blackwood's crew had gone. "White men poison water. Steal horses." She pointed to the corral where gaps in the remaining horses were evident. Understanding dawned in the woman's eyes, followed by alarm. She turned and called out in her native language. Within moments, several Apache women appeared, regarding Rebecca with suspicion. The elderly woman spoke rapidly, gesturing to the water, and then to Rebecca. The others looked from the stream to Rebecca, their expressions shifting from hostility to concern. "I must go," Rebecca said, though she knew they likely didn't understand her words. The men who did this could return. As she backed away toward her horse, one of the younger Apache women stepped forward and handed her something, a small pouch of what smelled like medicinal herbs, a gift of gratitude. Rebecca accepted it with a respectful nod, before mounting her mare. The ride back to the settlement was tense, her mind racing with what to do next. She should tell her father, but would he believe such an accusation against Blackwood? Would anyone? As she rounded the final bend before Cottonwood Creek, two riders appeared, blocking her path. Blackwood's foreman Jenkins, and one of his men from the stream. "Well now, what do we have here?" Jenkins drawled, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. "Miss Mitchell, out for a ride all alone, bit close to Apache territory, ain't you?" "I was treating the Cooper girl," Rebecca replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm returning home now." The second man spat tobacco juice onto the ground. "Funny route you took, almost like you was coming from the Apache camp itself." "I don't know what you mean." Rebecca tightened her grip on the reins. "Please let me pass." Jenkins urged his horse closer. "I think you do know. I think you saw something you shouldn't have, and now you're planning to run your pretty mouth about it. Mr. Blackwood won't take kindly to interference." The other man added, "He's got plans that don't include some woman stirring up trouble." Rebecca's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin defiantly. "Poisoning water that flows to both the Apache and our own settlement, stealing horses to provoke an attack, those are your master's plans?" Jenkins' face darkened. "You'd best forget what you think you saw, Miss Mitchell, for your own good. And your father's." The threat hung in the air between them. Rebecca knew she should agree, should pretend to comply, but the anger burning inside her wouldn't allow it. "I will not be silent while Blackwood manufactures a war," she declared. "Now move aside." Instead, Jenkins reached for her reins. Rebecca reacted instantly, bringing her riding crop down hard across his outstretched arm. He cursed as she kicked her mare into motion, breaking past the surprised men. "Get her," Jenkins shouted, and she heard hoofbeats in pursuit. Rebecca rode hard, her mare stretching into a gallop toward the settlement. If she could reach the main street, they wouldn't dare accost her in front of witnesses. The sound of her pursuers grew closer. She felt a hand grasp at her dress, tearing the fabric as she swerved sharply. The settlement came into view, but so did more of Blackwood's men, positioned as if waiting for her. Rebecca realized with dread that she'd ridden into a trap. She pulled her mare up short, hemmed in on all sides. "That's quite enough excitement for one day," Samuel Blackwood himself said, emerging from between two buildings. "Miss Mitchell, I believe we need to have a conversation about loyalty to one's neighbors." "Loyalty?" Rebecca's voice shook with anger rather than fear. "Is that what you call poisoning our water source and blaming the Apache, creating a conflict that could get people killed?" Gasps came from nearby settlers, who had gathered at the commotion. Blackwood's smile remained fixed, but his eyes turned cold. "What wild accusations," he said loudly for the benefit of the onlookers. "Perhaps Miss Mitchell has spent too much time with her herbs and potions, or worse." His voice hardened. "Perhaps she's been consorting with savages. I saw your men poison the stream and steal Apache horses," Rebecca declared, addressing the growing crowd rather than Blackwood. "They're creating a pretext for violence." "Lies," Jenkins shouted. "We caught her coming from the Apache camp. She was warning them, helping." The crowd's murmurs grew hostile. Thomas Mitchell pushed through, his face pale with shock as he took in the scene. "Rebecca, what is the meaning of this?" Before she could answer, Blackwood placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "I'm sorry, old friend. It seems your daughter has chosen the Apache over her own people. We found these on her." He held up the pouch of herbs the Apache woman had given her. "Apache medicine. The question is, what did she give them in return? Information about our defenses, perhaps?" "That's not true," Rebecca cried, but she could see doubt clouding even her father's eyes. Two men grabbed her arms, pulling her from her horse. The carved wooden horse her father had made fell from her pocket into the dust as they dragged her toward the settlement hall, where the elders would decide her fate. Miles away, on a high mesa, overlooking the territory that both Apache and settlers claimed, Chief Tall Eagle sat alone. In his hand, he held an eagle feather, the symbol of his name and his authority among his people. The feather had been given to him by his father, who had received it from his father before him. 3 generations of leadership, all facing the encroachment of the white settlers,
each in their own time. At 42, Tall Eagle had seen enough bloodshed to last several lifetimes. He had been a fierce warrior in his youth, earning respect through his courage and tactical mind, but the years had taught him that survival sometimes required wisdom over warfare. The Apache could not win a prolonged conflict against the ever-increasing numbers of settlers and their military allies. Yet neither could his people simply surrender their ancestral lands and way of life. This impossible balance weighed heavily on him, as he gazed across the valley where thin columns of smoke rose from both the Apache village and, farther away, the settlement called Cottonwood Creek. Brother, the voice of Running Fox, his most trusted warrior and childhood friend, interrupted his solitude. The council awaits. Tall Eagle nodded, tucking the eagle feather into the band around his head. Have our scouts returned? Yes. They bring troubling news. Many of our people are sick from bad water, and 3 of our finest horses are missing. Tall Eagle's jaw tightened. More provocations, more pressure, and the white settlement. They also have sickness among them, yet they blame us. As always, this detail gave Tall Eagle pause. If both peoples were suffering the same illness, then perhaps. He followed Running Fox down the narrow path to where the tribal elders had gathered in the council lodge. Among them sat Singing Bird, the oldest and wisest medicine woman of the tribe, and Fast Knife, the young warrior who led many of the hunting parties. The time for patience is over, Fast Knife was saying as Tall Eagle entered. Each day we wait. The white eyes grow bolder. They poison our water, steal our horses, push us further from the hunting grounds. Several elders nodded in agreement, but Singing Bird remained still, her ancient eyes finding Tall Eagle's as he took his place in the circle. And what would you have us do? Tall Eagle asked calmly. Attack their settlement, kill their men and women, and then what happens when their soldiers come with their many guns? Fast Knife scowled. We could strike quickly and be gone to the mountains before they hunt us down like animals. Tall Eagle interrupted. Before they use it as reason to break even the fragile peace we have. How many of our children would survive such a path? A tense silence fell over the lodge. Tall Eagle looked at each face in turn, reading the fear and anger, the uncertainty and pride. My husband would have said the same, said a quiet voice. White Dove, the chief's sister-in-law, rarely spoke at council meetings. Since the death of Tall Eagle's wife, her sister, 3 winters ago in a clash with settlers, White Dove had helped raise Tall Eagle's 2 sons. Morning Sky believed in finding another way. The mention of his late wife sent a familiar ache through Tall Eagle's chest. Morning Sky had been his strength, his wisdom, his heart. Her loss had nearly broken him, had nearly pushed him toward the path of vengeance that Fast Knife now advocated. Before further discussion could unfold, Running Fox returned to the lodge with a young scout. Chief, the scout said, slightly breathless. A white man approaches under the flag of talk. He brings a message from their leader. Murmurs rippled through the council. Tall Eagle rose. I will hear this message. Outside, a nervous-looking settler waited, holding a piece of paper and trying not to look directly at the warriors who surrounded him. When Tall Eagle approached, the man thrust the paper forward. From Mr. Blackwood and the Settlement Council, he stammered. Tall Eagle took the paper, though he could not read the white man's written words. Tell me what it says, he commanded. The messenger swallowed hard. It says we have captured one of our own who was helping your people, a woman who warned you about matters that aren't your concern. As punishment, the council has decided to give her to you, to do with as you see fit. Confused murmurs spread among the Apache who had gathered to witness the exchange. They give us one of their women as punishment, Running Fox asked incredulously. What trick is this? No trick, the messenger insisted. She betrayed her own kind. The council wants no part of her anymore. Tall Eagle's mind worked quickly. This was unusual, unprecedented even. When would this woman be brought to us? Tomorrow at midday, at the flat rocks by the crossing. Tall Eagle dismissed the messenger, who seemed all too happy to depart, then returned to the council lodge, where heated debate had already erupted. It is an insult, Fast Knife declared. They think we want their cast-offs. They're traitors. Or it is a trap. Another elder suggested. They will bring soldiers instead of a woman. If she truly warned our people about something, Singing Bird said thoughtfully. Perhaps she is not like the others. Tall Eagle held up his hand for silence. I will consider this matter. Leave me. One by one, the council members filed out, until only Singing Bird remained, her weathered hands folded patiently in her lap. You already know what you will do, she said, not a question but a statement. Tall Eagle met her knowing gaze. A woman who would risk her standing among her own people to warn us. She has honor, or perhaps a different purpose. We do not yet understand. The young warriors will not like it if you accept this gift. Singing Bird's mouth twisted at the word. They do not have to like it, they must only obey. Tall Eagle touched the eagle feather in his headband. There is something here beyond what we can see. I feel it, as did your father before you. Singing Bird rose with the careful movements of great age. I will prepare a lodge for the white woman, the small one near the spring. Tall Eagle looked at her in surprise. The lodge she mentioned had been empty since his wife's death. It was a place of honor, not for prisoners or slaves. Singing Bird smiled at his expression. If you intend to treat her with dignity, we should begin as we mean to continue. After she left, Tall Eagle walked to the edge of the village, where a simple stone marked the place of Morning Sky's spirit. He knelt there, the eagle feather now held between his palms. Guide me, he whispered to her memory. Show me if this path leads to peace, or more sorrow. No answer came, but the gentle stirring of wind through the juniper trees. Yet as he rose, Tall Eagle felt a certainty settle within him. He would accept the white woman, not as a prisoner to punish, but as someone who might bridge the chasm between two worlds, a chasm that had already claimed too many lives, including his beloved Morning Skies. Dawn broke cold and clear over Cottonwood Creek settlement. Rebecca sat alone in the small storeroom that had served as her prison through the night. She had not slept. The council's verdict echoed in her mind. She would be given to the Apache as a gesture of justice for her supposed betrayal. Rebecca knew what everyone expected, that Chief Tall Eagle would torture or kill her, making an example of the settler woman who had dared interfere. Yet death seemed preferable to watching Blackwood manipulate both sides into a bloody conflict while she remained silent. The door creaked open, and her father entered, his face haggard from a sleepless night of his own. Rebecca, he whispered, kneeling beside her. Why would you risk everything to help them? She met his gaze steadily. I wasn't helping them against us, father. I was trying to prevent Blackwood from poisoning both sides, literally and figuratively. Blackwood says you're confused, that you misunderstood what you saw. Hope clung to his words. If you would just recant. I can't lie to save myself. Rebecca took his weathered hands in hers. Mother wouldn't have. Pain flashed across Thomas Mitchell's face at the mention of his wife. Wordlessly, he pressed something into Rebecca's palm. Her mother's small Bible. They said you could take one possession, he murmured. I thought she would want you to have this. Rebecca clutched the Bible to her chest, tears threatening for the first time. Thank you. The door opened again. Samuel Blackwood stood there with two armed men. It's time, Miss Mitchell. The journey to the neutral meeting ground was conducted in tense silence. Rebecca rode with her hands bound loosely before her, flanked by Blackwood and the settlement's unofficial militia. Behind them came a wagon carrying several council members, including her father. As they approached the flat rocks that marked the territorial boundary, Rebecca saw a group of Apache already waiting. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but she kept her head high, refusing to show fear. Chief Tall Eagle was unmistakable among his warriors. Taller than most, with the quiet dignity of natural authority, he wore a single eagle feather in his headband. His face remained impassive as the settlers approached, but his dark eyes missed nothing. Blackwood nudged his horse forward. We have brought the woman, as agreed. She betrayed her people by warning yours of matters that did not concern you. The chief's gaze shifted to Rebecca, studying her with unexpected intensity. She met his eyes without flinching. She is unharmed. The chief's English surprised many of the settlers. Blackwood's smile tightened. For now, her fate is in your hands, as agreed by our council. Rebecca felt her father's anguish as he watched from the wagon, but he remained silent, bound by the council's decision he had been outvoted on. Rebecca, her father's voice finally broke as she was helped down from her horse. He approached the council members watching closely and embraced her one last time. As they separated, he slipped the small Bible into her bound hands. "Be brave," he whispered. "Always," she replied, fighting back tears. Blackwood stepped between them. "Enough sentimentality. The decision is made." To the chief, he added with poorly concealed satisfaction, "She's yours now. Do what you will with the traitor." Rebecca was led to the invisible line that separated the two territories. A young Apache warrior approached cautiously to escort her across, but Chief Tall Eagle raised his hand, stopping him. To everyone's surprise, the chief himself dismounted and walked forward. Up close, Rebecca could see the wisdom and weariness etched in his face. He was perhaps 40, with eyes that had witnessed too much suffering. Without a word, he untied her bound wrists. Gasps rose from both sides. This was not how enemies treated prisoners. "You will ride," he said quietly, indicating a painted mare held by one of his warriors, "not be led like captive." Rebecca's surprise must have shown on her face, for the faintest trace of something, amusement, flickered in the chief's eyes before his expression returned to careful neutrality. As she mounted the offered horse, Rebecca glimpsed Blackwood's face, contorted with thwarted expectations. He had wanted her humiliated, dragged away like a trophy. Instead, she sat tall on an Apache horse, her dignity intact. Chief Tall Eagle turned his back on the settlers and led his people away, Rebecca riding among them, not as a prisoner, but as something yet undefined. The Apache village appeared before them as the sun began its descent, nestled against the protective embrace of red sandstone cliff. Unlike the rigid rectangular structures of Cottonwood Creek, these dwellings seemed to grow organically from the landscape, brush shelters and wickiups arranged in family clusters around central cooking fires. Rebecca felt the stares of the Apache people as she rode in with their chief. Women paused in their work, children whispered behind cupped hands, and warriors regarded her with suspicious eyes. She had expected hatred, perhaps even violence, but instead found a wary curiosity in their gaze. Chief Tall Eagle dismounted and spoke quietly to an elderly woman, whose deeply lined face reminded Rebecca of the ancient juniper trees that dotted the territory. The woman nodded and approached Rebecca. "Come," she said in accented English, gesturing for Rebecca to follow. Rebecca hesitated, looking to the chief. He nodded once, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. The old woman led her to a small dwelling set slightly apart from the others, near a clear spring that bubbled from the red rock. Inside was simple but comfortable, a sleeping mat covered with finely tanned hides, a small fire pit, clay vessels for water and cooking, and bundles of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling supports. "You stay here," the woman explained. "I am Singing Bird." "I'm Rebecca Mitchell," she replied automatically, still confused by this treatment. "I don't understand. Am I not a prisoner?" Singing Bird's weathered face creased in what might have been amusement. "Chief says you are guest." "Guest," Rebecca repeated incredulously. "But the settlers, they gave me to your people as punishment." "White eyes often give what is not theirs to give," Singing Bird replied cryptically. "Chief will speak with you after you wash and eat." With that, she left Rebecca alone with her bewilderment. On a low table sat a clay bowl of water, the first artifact of her new existence here. Rebecca approached it cautiously, noticing its simple elegance and the careful patterns etched around its rim. After washing away the dust of the journey, Rebecca sat cross-legged on the sleeping mat, her mother's Bible clutched in her hands, like an anchor to her former life. Outside, she could hear the normal sounds of village life continuing, children laughing, women calling to one another, the rhythmic scraping of hides being tanned. The entrance flap moved aside and Chief Tall Eagle ducked into the dwelling. In the confined space, his presence seemed even more imposing. He carried another clay bowl, this one filled with a fragrant stew. "You must eat," he said, offering her the bowl. "Long journey." Rebecca accepted it hesitantly. "Thank you, but I don't understand why you're treating me this way. Your people have every reason to hate settlers." The chief settled himself across from her, his dark eyes studying her face. "Hate is easy. Understanding is harder," He gestured to the bowl. Eat first, then we talk. The stew was surprisingly flavorful, rich with unfamiliar herbs and tender meat. Rebecca hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite awakened her appetite. As she ate, Tall Eagle spoke. Singing Bird says you warned our women about poisoned water. Why? Rebecca met his gaze. Because it was wrong. Blackwood's men poisoned water that flows to both our peoples. They wanted to create conflict. Many white eyes would let Apache die. I'm not many white eyes, Rebecca replied simply. Something that might have been approval flickered in the chief's expression. No, you are not. He paused. Your people expect me to punish you, to make you slave or worse. Rebecca swallowed hard. And will you? No. Tall Eagle's answer was immediate and firm. You showed courage and honor. These things are respected among Apache. Then what will happen to me? Rebecca asked, placing the empty bowl aside. You will stay as guest of chief. Learn our ways. Help Singing Bird with medicine perhaps. He rose to his full height. No one will harm you while you are under my protection. And if I wanted to leave, to return to the settlement. Tall Eagle's expression darkened slightly. Would they welcome back woman they gave away as punishment?
Rebecca recognized many plants from her own healing work, but learned that the Apache used them differently, often more effectively. She watched Singing Bird's expert hands gather juniper berries for fever, wild mint for stomach ailments, and yucca root for wounds. These plants speak to you, Rebecca asked. Fascinated by the old woman's intimate knowledge, Singing Bird nodded. They tell their secrets if you listen with respect. She handed Rebecca the medicine pouch. For you to collect your own. Rebecca accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. The pouch was beautifully crafted from soft deerskin, decorated with subtle bead patterns that caught the morning light. Thank you, she said, running her fingers over the intricate beadwork. I'll use it well. As they worked, Rebecca's gaze occasionally drifted to the distant settlement. From this vantage point, Cottonwood Creek looked fragile and temporary against the ancient landscape. You miss your people, Singing Bird observed. Some, Rebecca admitted. My father, but not their hatred, not their fear of what they don't understand. Singing Bird studied her with eyes that had witnessed nearly 8 decades of life. Apache also fear what they do not understand. This is why Chief says you must be seen working, helping, becoming known. On their return to the village, they encountered Chief Tall Eagle speaking with several warriors. He acknowledged Rebecca with a slight nod before continuing his discussion. Though she couldn't understand the words, the grave tone suggested important matters. That afternoon, Rebecca helped Singing Bird prepare medicines from their morning's harvest. Other Apache women gradually drew closer, initially to observe but eventually to participate. A young mother brought her feverish infant, her eyes pleading above her proud reserve. May I? Rebecca asked Singing Bird, gesturing toward the child. The old woman nodded, watching closely as Rebecca gently examined the baby. She recognized the symptoms immediately. The same fever that had affected Sarah Cooper back at the settlement. Using a mixture of Singing Bird's juniper berry remedy and her own knowledge of willow bark, Rebecca prepared a mild tea. She showed the mother how to administer small amounts to the infant. Return when sun touches mountain, she instructed, mimicking the time with gestures. We check again. By evening, word had spread of the white woman's healing skills. The baby's fever had broken, and several other Apache came seeking remedies for various ailments. Rebecca worked alongside Singing Bird until twilight painted the cliffs in deepening shades of amber and crimson. As they finished, Rebecca noticed Chief Tall Eagle, observing from a respectful distance, his expression thoughtful. When Singing Bird retired to her dwelling, he approached. You help my people, he stated. Not a question but an acknowledgement. Rebecca nodded. It's what I know how to do. Some say white woman's medicine is bad magic, he admitted. I tell them to watch and judge with open eyes, and have they? Rebecca asked. A rare smile touched the chief's lips. Baby sleeps without fever. Mother sings with joy. This speaks louder than fear. They walked in companionable silence toward Rebecca's dwelling. The evening air carried the scent of pinyon smoke and cooking meals, unexpectedly comforting in its unfamiliarity. "Tomorrow," Tall Eagle said as they reached her doorway, "you join council fire. People should hear your words about poisoned water, about Blackwood." Rebecca hesitated. Will they believe a white woman's story? "Truth has its own voice," the chief replied. Apache listened for this voice beneath the word. As darkness settled over the village, and the stars emerged in brilliant clarity, Rebecca sat outside her dwelling. From here she could just make out the distant lights of Cottonwood Creek. Two worlds, so close yet separated by chasms of misunderstanding. For the first time since her arrival, she felt something unexpected taking root alongside her uncertainty, a sense of purpose and perhaps even belonging. The council fire had just been lit when shouts erupted from the edge of the village. Rebecca turned with the others to see 3 Apache warriors riding hard toward them. One slumped over his horse's neck, clearly wounded. Chief Tall Eagle rose immediately, his commanding presence parting the concerned crowd as he strode to meet the returning hunter. Rebecca followed, Singing Bird, who hurried forward with her medicine pouch. The wounded man was gently lowered to the ground. Blood soaked his buckskin shirt from a bullet wound in his shoulder. Another hunter nursed a deep gash across his forearm. Their expressions were masks of pain and rage. "White men attacked us at the North Valley," the third hunter reported, his voice tight with controlled fury. "They said we trespassed on their hunting grounds. We were on Apache land." Murmurs of anger rippled through the gathering crowd. Fast Knife pushed forward, his hand already on his knife. "This is what comes of patience. While we talk, they shoot." Rebecca knelt beside Singing Bird, who was examining the bullet wound. "I can help," she offered quietly. The wounded man's eyes flashed with distrust. "No white medicine," he growled through clenched teeth. "Let her help." Chief Tall Eagle's voice cut through the tension. "She knows these wounds better than we do." Reluctantly, the warrior submitted to Rebecca's examination. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his shoulder, painful but not immediately life-threatening, if infection could be prevented. Working alongside Singing Bird, Rebecca cleaned and dressed both men's wounds. As she tied the last bandage, Fast Knife's voice rose above the crowd. "We must answer this attack. Blood calls for blood." Several younger warriors shouted in agreement, brandishing weapons. "And then what?" Chief Tall Eagle's voice remained calm but carried an edge of steel. "Their soldiers come. More Apache die. Is this what you want?" Fast Knife pointed accusingly at Rebecca. "Since she came, they grow bolder. Perhaps she sends messages. Perhaps this is all her plan." The wounded warrior's hand suddenly gripped Rebecca's wrist. She froze, expecting violence, but instead he addressed Fast Knife. "She heals with good hands. She is not part of this." A broken arrow lay in the dust beside him, a shaft splintered by a settler's bullet. Rebecca picked it up, the broken wood a stark symbol of the cycle of violence that seemed impossible to break. Chief Tall Eagle's eyes met Rebecca's across the crowd. "The white woman came to us because she tried to stop poison in the water. She warned our women when her own people would not listen." He addressed the entire tribe now. "If we kill in anger, we become what they claim we are, savages without reason. So we do nothing." Fast Knife challenged, his young face flushed with emotion. "I did not say this." The chief's voice hardened. "We will guard our hunting parties better. We will move the women and children to the summer grounds earlier than planned." He paused, his gaze sweeping the assembled tribe. "We will seek to understand why these attacks come now." His eyes returned to Rebecca. "You know this man Blackwood. Why does he want war between our peoples?" All eyes turned to her. Rebecca swallowed hard, aware that her answer might affect the lives of everyone present. "The land near the North Valley. There are rumors of gold deposits there. Blackwood has investors from back east. But he can't claim that land while it's disputed territory." The implications hung in the air. If the Apache were driven out or killed,
Understanding dawned on many faces. Chief Tall Eagle nodded grimly. So he creates reasons for conflict. First the water. Now this. Not all settlers want this fight. Rebecca added, many just want to live in peace, to farm and raise their families. Pretty words, Fast Knife scoffed. But it is not your blood on the ground today. Enough, Chief Tall Eagle commanded. Tonight we honor our wounded brothers. Tomorrow we make plans. To Rebecca he added more quietly, you have shown loyalty by helping our hunters. This will not be forgotten. Later, as the village settled into an uneasy night, Rebecca sat outside her dwelling. Chief Tall Eagle approached, seating himself nearby. Your people will say Apache attacked first, he observed. The story will change with each telling. As stories often do, Rebecca agreed sadly. Tomorrow I must send runners to other Apache bands. Warn them. He studied her thoughtfully. You understand both worlds now. This is rare gift and great burden. Rebecca looked down at the broken arrow she still held. I never thought I'd find myself caught between worlds like this. Not between, the chief corrected gently. Across, like bridge. In the firelight his eyes held something new when they met hers. Not just respect, but a deeper recognition that made her heart beat faster in her chest. 3 days after the hunters' return, a new crisis emerged. 2 Apache children fell ill with violent stomach pains and high fevers. By nightfall, 5 more showed the same symptoms. Rebecca recognized it immediately. The same illness that had affected both the settlement and the Apache camp after the water poisoning. Despite their precautions, some contamination must have reached the village water supply. I've seen this before, she told Singing Bird as they tended to a 7-year-old boy whose small body shook with fever. The poison Blackwood's men used it lingers. Singing Bird's aged face creased with worry. Our medicine helps some, but the little ones grow worse. Rebecca thought back to her mother's medical books. There's a plant, orange trumpet flowers with fern-like leaves. It grows in deep canyons with water. My mother's people called it golden seal. Spirit medicine, Singing Bird nodded. Very powerful. Very rare. Grows only in hidden canyon. 2 days' journey. She looked doubtfully at the suffering child. Some may not have 2 days. Rebecca's determination solidified. Then we must go immediately. When she proposed the journey to Chief Tall Eagle, he listened gravely. Hidden Canyon is sacred place. Few are permitted there. I understand. But I will take you, he interrupted. No one else. We leave at dawn. They departed as the first light painted the eastern sky, carrying only what they could fit in small packs. The sacred herb bundle Singing Bird prepared for them, containing offerings for the spirits of the canyon, was tucked carefully in Rebecca's medicine pouch. They rode hard through the morning, Chief Tall Eagle setting a pace that spoke of his concern for the children. By midday they had left familiar territory, entering a maze of narrow canyons that would have been impossible to navigate without the chief's intimate knowledge. How much farther? Rebecca asked during a brief rest to water the horses. We reach canyon mouth by sunset, but the plants grow deep within. Tall Eagle studied her with unexpected concern. Journey is difficult. You are tired already. Rebecca straightened in her saddle. The children need this medicine. I won't slow you down. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. You have strong spirit, Rebecca Mitchell. It was the first time he had used her name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her despite her exhaustion. As promised, they reached the entrance to Hidden Canyon. As the sun dipped below the western mesa, the narrow opening between towering red rock walls would have been easy to miss without a guide. We go on foot from here, Tall Eagle said, securing their horses in a small grove of cottonwoods. The canyon beyond was unlike anything Rebecca had ever seen. A secret world of hanging gardens, clear pools and ancient pictographs painted on the smooth stone walls. In the fading light it seemed magical, sacred. This place, she whispered, has been Apache medicine ground since before memory. Tall Eagle finished. Few outsiders have ever seen it. They made camp beside a small spring. eating a simple meal of dried meat and berries. The chief performed a brief ceremony with Singing Bird's herb bundle, offering thanks to the spirits of the canyon. "We will find the plants at first light," he said, settling across the small fire from her. "They grow near the waterfall at Canyon's heart." In the intimate quiet of the hidden place, Rebecca found herself studying the man before her, not as the imposing chief, but as a person of depth and complexity she was only beginning to understand. "Why did you really bring me here?" she asked suddenly. "Singing Bird knows these plants better than I do." Tall Eagle was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "Singing Bird is too old for such a journey, and—" he hesitated. "I trust you, Rebecca, not just with Apache medicine but with Apache's sacred places. Even though I'm white, you have proven yourself not by your words, but by your actions." He added a small branch to the fire. "When you heal Apache children, you do not see them as Apache or white. You see only children who need help." His insight humbled her. "Thank you for trusting me." As night deepened around them, a mountain lion's cry echoed through the canyon. "Close, too close." Tall Eagle was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "Stay by the fire," he ordered, moving to check the perimeter. Moments later, a tawny shape appeared on a ledge above their camp, a large female lion, muscles rippling beneath her coat as she prepared to spring. Rebecca froze, her heart hammering against her ribs as the predator's eyes locked with her. The mountain lion's muscles tensed, its predatory gaze fixed on Rebecca. Time seemed to slow as she realized she was about to die in this sacred canyon, so far from everything she had ever known. A sharp whistle cut through the night. Chief Tall Eagle stood directly between Rebecca and the mountain lion, his rifle raised but not fired. Instead, he spoke in a low, rhythmic chant, words Rebecca couldn't understand but that seemed oddly soothing even to her ear. The great cat's ears flicked forward, its posture still tense but no longer poised to spring. For an impossibly long moment, man and predator regarded each other. Then, with a dismissive flick of its tail, the mountain lion turned and disappeared into the darkness. Rebecca released the breath she'd been holding. "How did you do that?" "Old songs," Tall Eagle said simply, lowering his rifle. "My grandfather taught me. The lion people respect those who speak to them properly." He moved closer, his eyes checking her for signs of shock. "You did not scream or run. Most would have. I was too frightened to move," Rebecca admitted. A rare smile touched his lips. "Sometimes fear teaches wisdom." They spent the rest of the night taking turns keeping watch, though the mountain lion did not return. At first light they continued deeper into the canyon, until they reached a small waterfall that cascaded down moss-covered rocks into a clear pool. There, Tall Eagle pointed to a cluster of vibrant orange flowers growing in the moist soil near the water's edge. "Spirit medicine." Rebecca carefully harvested the precious plants, wrapping their roots in damp cloth as her mother had taught her. "This will be enough," she said, securing the bundle in her medicine pouch. "We should hurry back." Their return journey was even more urgent than their departure. By the time they reached the Apache village, the following evening, exhaustion had settled deep in Rebecca's bones, but she went immediately to Singing Bird's dwelling, where the sickest children had been gathered. The scene inside was grim. 8 children now lay on pallets, their small bodies burning with fever, their mothers maintaining silent vigils beside them. 2 more fell sick while you were gone, Singing Bird informed them, her ancient hands continuing to apply cool cloths to a little girl's forehead. Rebecca wasted no time. Working with Singing Bird, she prepared the golden seal roots, combining them with other herbs from the old woman's stores. The resulting medicine was bitter, and they had to coax it into the children spoonful by spoonful. Through the night, Rebecca moved from child to child, monitoring their conditions, adjusting treatments as needed. Chief Tall Eagle remained as well, speaking quiet words of encouragement to worried parents, helping where he could, watching Rebecca with undisguised admiration. Dawn was breaking when the youngest child's fever finally broke. By midday, all but 2 were showing signs of improvement. By evening, Even the sickest had turned the corner toward recovery. As word spread through the village, Apache women began bringing gifts to Rebecca: a finely woven blanket, beaded moccasins, specially prepared foods. Each offering was presented with few words but unmistakable gratitude. "They honor you," Singing Bird explained, helping Rebecca arrange the gifts in her dwelling. "You are no longer outsider to them." That night, the tribe held a celebration of Thanksgiving. Around the central fire, children who had been deathly ill just days before now played and laughed. Their parents watched, with the special joy of those who have nearly lost what they hold most precious. Chief Tall Eagle formally presented Rebecca to the tribe, speaking of her courage and healing skills. When he placed the woven blanket, the most beautiful of her gifts, around her shoulders, his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary. "My people wish to thank you," he said, his deep voice carrying easily to all gathered. "Your knowledge and brave heart have saved our children. The Apache do not forget such debts." Rebecca looked around at the faces that had once regarded her with suspicion, now open with acceptance and respect. "There is no debt," she replied. "These children needed help. I am grateful I could give it." Later, as the celebration continued around them, Chief Tall Eagle walked with Rebecca to the edge of the village. The stars seemed impossibly bright, the night air sweet with juniper and pinyon. "You have changed things," he said quietly. "For the children, for the tribe." He paused, his dark eyes reflecting the distant firelight. "For me." Rebecca felt her heart quicken at his words, at the unmistakable warmth in his voice. She had come to this place as an offering, a punishment. Now, somehow, she had found something she never expected: a purpose, a community, and perhaps something more precious still, growing between herself and this remarkable man. A messenger arrived at the Apache village 2 weeks after the children's recovery. A young settler Rebecca recognized as the blacksmith's son from Cottonwood Creek. He brought word that the settlement council proposed a trading meeting on neutral ground, ostensibly to reduce tensions after the hunting party incident. Chief Tall Eagle called his own council to discuss the proposal. To Rebecca's surprise, he requested her presence. The White Eyes asked for peaceful talk. Running Fox said skeptically, "While their bullets still sit in our brother's shoulder." Fast Knife agreed. "It is a trap. They wish to scout our numbers, our weapon." Rebecca listened as the debate continued, various elders and warriors expressing similar doubts. When all had spoken, Tall Eagle turned to her. "What do you see in this invitation?" She chose her words carefully, aware of the responsibility he had placed on her. It could be Blackwood attempting to gather information, but it could also be others in the settlement, like my father, trying to prevent more bloodshed. "And if you were to attend, would that change matters?" The question caught her off guard. "You understand both sides," the chief explained. "You could see truth or lies in their words where we might miss them." The next morning, Rebecca found herself riding beside Chief Tall Eagle and 5 of his most trusted warriors toward the meeting place, a flat area beside the creek that gave the settlement its name. 4 Apache carried rifles, while the chief himself wore only the ceremonial peace pipe at his belt, making a statement about his intentions. As they approached, Rebecca saw the settlement delegation already waiting, 5 men including Samuel Blackwood, and to her shock, her father. Thomas Mitchell looked years older than when she'd last seen him, his face deeply lined with worry. Blackwood's expression darkened visibly when he spotted Rebecca riding freely alongside the chief rather than bound as a captive. "What trickery is this?" he demanded as they dismounted. "The savage brings our woman to taunt us. I bring Rebecca Mitchell because she understands both Apache and settler ways." Chief Tall Eagle replied with dignity. "She will help ensure clear understanding between us." Rebecca met her father's gaze across the space between the two groups. The naked emotion in his eyes, relief, love, confusion, nearly broke her composure. "Rebecca," he whispered, "you're alive. You're well." "I am, father," she replied softly. Blackwood stepped between them. "Enough of this reunion. We came to discuss terms of trade and territory, not to socialize with traitors." The formal meeting began, with both sides seated in a rough circle. The peace pipe was passed, accepted by Thomas Mitchell and 2 others from the settlement. pointedly refused by Blackwood and his closest ally. Rebecca found herself acting as more than just observer. When cultural misunderstandings arose, she quietly clarified, explaining Apache concepts to the settlers and settler terminology to the Apache. Chief Tall Eagle watched her work with unmistakable pride. Progress was slow but real. Agreements were reached on hunting territories and water access, at least temporarily. But when discussion turned to the contested North Valley, where Blackwood's rumored gold deposits lay, the atmosphere tensed again. That valley has always been Apache land, Tall Eagle stated firmly. Your people roam everywhere and claim it all, Blackwood countered. The settlement needs room to grow. We have families, children. As do the Apache, Rebecca interjected. Blackwood's cold eyes fixed on her. You've made your allegiance clear, Miss Mitchell. Perhaps you should start wearing war paint and be done with the pretense. Enough, Thomas Mitchell said, finding his voice at last. My daughter sought to prevent bloodshed. For that we cast her out. Perhaps we should consider that she might see things we can. When the meeting concluded with tentative agreements but unresolved tensions, Thomas approached Rebecca as the groups prepared to depart. Come home, he pleaded quietly. Whatever you did, the settlement would forgive in time. I miss you, daughter. Rebecca's heart ached at the pain in his voice. It's not that simple anymore, father. Because of him. Thomas glanced toward Chief Tall Eagle, who was deliberately giving them space for this private moment. Because of everything, Rebecca answered honestly. I've learned things, seen things. The Apache aren't what we thought. And what of your place among your own people? The question struck deeper than he knew. Rebecca had been asking herself the same thing with increasing frequency. I don't know where my place is anymore, she admitted. But I'm not ready to return. Not yet. Thomas reached into his pocket and pressed something into her hand. A small carved wooden horse. The childhood gift she had dropped during her arrest. Then keep this, to remember where you came from. As the two groups parted ways, Rebecca felt the weight of her father's sadness, Blackwood's hatred, and most confusingly, Chief Tall Eagle's quiet presence beside her. A presence that increasingly felt like home. The wooden horse sat in Rebecca's palm, smooth and familiar. A tangible piece of her former life. She had been turning it over and over, for hours as evening shadows lengthened across the village. Seeing her father had stirred emotions she'd carefully contained during her weeks with the Apache, longing for the simple certainties of her past, guilt over his suffering, confusion about where she truly belonged.
A soft footfall announced Chief Tall Eagle's approach. He seated himself nearby, respecting her contemplative solitude while offering silent companionship. Your father's pain was clear, he finally said. You share this pain, Rebecca nodded, closing her fingers around the carved horse. I never meant to hurt him. He's lost so much already. He offered you return to settlement. Yes. Yet you came back to the Apache. Tall Eagle's tone held a question he didn't directly ask. Rebecca met his gaze. Would you have stopped me if I'd chosen to stay with my father? No, his answer came without hesitation. I told you when you first came, you are not prisoner here. Then why do you look troubled by the possibility? A rare vulnerability crossed his face. Because the village would be less without you now. The simple admission warmed something deep within her. Before she could respond, Singing Bird appeared, her aged face alight with unusual excitement. The ceremony of First Woman begins tomorrow, she announced. The chief's council says you should attend. Rebecca looked to Tall Eagle in surprise. The ceremony was one she had heard mentioned with reverence, an important Apache ritual rarely witnessed by outsiders. It is time, he said simply. The following day brought a flurry of activity as the village prepared. Women constructed a special lodge and gathered particular plants and symbolic items. Young girls giggled and whispered as they collected firewood and water. In the afternoon, Singing Bird came to Rebecca's dwelling carrying a bundle wrapped in soft deerskin. For ceremony, she explained, unveiling a beautifully beaded dress of unprecedented craftsmanship. Intricate patterns of blue, red, and white beads caught the light, telling stories Rebecca was only beginning to understand. I couldn't possibly, Rebecca began, overwhelmed by the gift's significance. Chief ordered finest dress for you. Singing Bird interrupted with a knowing smile. Many women worked many days to make it beautiful. That evening, wearing the beaded dress and with her hair adorned with small white flowers, Rebecca joined the women gathering for the ceremony. The Apache girls in their ceremonial attire glanced at her with shy curiosity rather than the suspicion of weeks past. The ceremony began as the first stars appeared. Rebecca watched, entranced as dancers moved around the sacred fire, their steps telling ancient stories of creation and renewal. The rhythmic drums and voices created a hypnotic backdrop to the unfolding ritual. Chief Tall Eagle presided with solemn dignity, his ceremonial attire emphasizing his powerful presence. Several times Rebecca caught his gaze, finding her across the firelight, lingering with an intensity that sent unexpected warmth through her. During a pause in the ceremonies, he approached where she sat slightly apart from the others. "The dress suits you," he said, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "It's beautiful beyond words," Rebecca replied. "I'm honored by such a gift." Apache believed that beauty should be worn by beauty. His dark eyes held hers for a moment longer than customary. "You understand now why I asked you to stay for this ceremony before deciding your path?" Rebecca nodded, beginning to comprehend. The ceremony wasn't just about Apache traditions. It was about belonging, about community, about seeing herself as part of something rather than caught between worlds. "When my wife died," Tall Eagle continued, the firelight casting shadows across his strong features, "I thought my heart died with her. I led my people because it was duty, not joy." He gestured subtly toward the celebrating tribe. "You have brought healing not just to our sick, but to something broken in our spirit. In my spirit." The raw honesty of his words stole Rebecca's breath. Before she could formulate a response, he was called back to his ceremonial duties, leaving her with emotions swirling like the sparks from the sacred fire. Later that night, as the ceremony continued under star-filled skies, Rebecca found herself at a crossroads more profound than any physical journey. The carved wooden horse from her father sat in one pocket of her beaded dress. In the other, she had placed an eagle feather Tall Eagle had honored her with during the ceremony. Two symbols, two worlds, two pulls on a heart. Increasingly certain of what it wanted, yet still afraid to claim it fully as her own. Dawn was breaking as Rebecca returned to the settlement, her heart pounding with fear and determination. The Apache ceremony had continued late into the night, and she had slipped away afterward, driven by the urgent message her father had secretly pressed into her hand during their parting at the trade meeting. The folded paper had contained a warning that had chilled her blood. "Blackwood has contacted military at Fort Grant. Claims Apache raids. Troops expected within week. Destroy this, father." Rebecca approached Cottonwood Creek cautiously, avoiding the main path. The settlement was just stirring to life, smoke rising from cabin chimneys against the pale morning sky. She needed to find her father, to learn more details of Blackwood's plot before warning the Apache. Thomas Mitchell's cabin stood on the eastern edge of the settlement. Rebecca circled behind it, tapping softly on the back window. Moments later, her father's shocked face appeared. "Rebecca," he whispered, quickly ushering her inside. "What are you doing here? It's not safe." "Your message," she explained breathlessly. "I had to know more. When are the soldiers coming? What has Blackwood told them?" Thomas pulled a military order from beneath a floorboard. "This came by courier yesterday. Blackwood's been communicating with the fort for weeks, fabricating reports of Apache raids, stealing, killings that never happened." Rebecca scanned the document with growing horror. It authorized a full cavalry detachment to neutralize the hostile Apache threat in the North Valley, exactly where Blackwood's rumored gold deposits lay. "This is murder by official sanction," she whispered. "Blackwood has powerful friends," Thomas replied grimly. "The fort commander has never set foot in our territory. He only knows what Blackwood tells him. I have to warn the Apache. They can move the women and children to safety before." A noise outside cut her short. Thomas peered through the window and paled. "Blackwood's men. They're making morning rounds." "I need to go," Rebecca said, already moving toward the back door. Her father caught her arm. "Be careful."
Blackwood subtext, I'm sympathetic to the Apache. He's had men watching my cabin. With a quick embrace, Rebecca slipped out the back door and into the cover of scrub brush behind the settlement. She had nearly reached the path to her hidden horse, when a voice called out, "Well now, look who's returned to us." Jenkins, Blackwood's foreman, stepped from behind a boulder, rifle aimed casually in her direction. Two more of Blackwood's men emerged from the brush. "Thought you'd gone native for good, Miss Mitchell," Jenkins drawled. "Miss Blackwood will be mighty interested to hear you've been sneaking around." Rebecca backed away slowly. "I came to see my father. That's all. With no escort from your Apache friends. Seems unlikely." Jenkins advanced. "Or maybe you came to spy, to warn them about something." She turned to run, but one of the men cut off her escape. As they closed in, Rebecca's hand found a rock. She swung wildly, connecting with Jenkins' shoulder. He cursed, lunging for her, but she ducked and ran. A shot cracked through the morning air, deliberately wide but close enough to spray dirt at her feet. Rebecca stumbled, giving Jenkins time to grab her arm roughly. "Mr. Blackwood wants to have words with you," he snarled, twisting her arm behind her back. They dragged her toward Blackwood's house, but had only gone a few paces when the sound of approaching horses made them pause. Rebecca's heart leapt at the sight of Chief Tall Eagle, and 3 warriors riding hard toward them. "Apache," one of Blackwood's men shouted, raising his rifle. Jenkins pushed Rebecca to the ground, taking aim at the approaching riders. "No," Rebecca cried, struggling to her feet. Chief Tall Eagle reined his horse to a halt, just out of rifle range, his face a mask of controlled fury as he assessed the situation. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that moment Rebecca knew he had followed her, perhaps suspecting her mission, perhaps simply concerned for her safety. "Let her go," Tall Eagle called, his deep voice carrying clearly, "She is under my protection." Jenkins laughed harshly. "She's a settler, not one of your squaws, Chief. She's coming with us. Then I come too," Tall Eagle replied, dismounting in a gesture that shocked everyone present. He handed his rifle to one of his warriors and walked forward, unarmed, his hands visible. "Where she goes, I go." The simple declaration, spoken with unwavering certainty, sent a flood of emotion through Rebecca. In that moment, surrounded by danger, one truth crystallized with perfect clarity. She loved him. Jenkins and his men were momentarily stunned by Chief Tall Eagle's bold move. Rebecca seized the opportunity, twisting free from her captor's loosened grip and running toward the chief. "It's a trap," she cried. "Blackwood has called for the cavalry. They're coming to attack the village." Tall Eagle's warriors tensed, hands tightening on their weapons, but the chief himself remained calm, his eyes never leaving Rebecca's face. "When?" he asked simply. "Within days. We need to warn everyone. Get the women and children to safety." The sound of more horses approaching interrupted them. Samuel Blackwood himself, accompanied by several armed men. "Isn't this touching?" Blackwood sneered, surveying the scene. "The savage chief comes to rescue his white squaw." "Rebecca warned your people of poison water," Tall Eagle replied with dignity. "Now she warns mine of your treachery. She sees truth when others choose blindness." Blackwood's face darkened. "Arrest them both, the chief for trespassing on settlement land, and the woman for treason. You have no authority," to Rebecca began, but Blackwood cut her off. "I have every authority. The settlement council appointed me acting marshal after the unfortunate incident with Jenkins' brother." His smile was cold. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you?" Rebecca remembered the previous marshal, a fair-minded man who had questioned Blackwood's tactics. His replacement by Blackwood explained much about the escalating tensions as Blackwood's men moved to surround them. Chief Tall Eagle gave a subtle signal to his warriors on the ridge. In response, 24 more Apache appeared on the surrounding hillsides, bows and rifles at the ready. "We leave now," Tall Eagle stated, his tone making it clear this was not a request. "Any man who raises weapon dies first." The sudden show of Apache strength created enough confusion for Rebecca and Tall Eagle to mount his horse. The chief's warriors covered their retreat as they galloped away from the settlement, riding hard toward the Apache village. They were watching my father's cabin, Rebecca explained as they rode. They must have suspected he would try to warn me. I knew something was wrong when you left in darkness, Tall Eagle replied, his arms secure around her waist as they shared his horse. You spoke many times of your father's goodness. I believed you would only return to him if the need was great. They reached the village by midday, raising the alarm with the thundering beat of the war drum. The tribe gathered quickly, faces grim as Tall Eagle explained the imminent threat. We must move the women, children, and elders to the summer grounds in the high canyon, he ordered. Warriors will remain to watch the soldiers approach and protect our retreat if needed. The village erupted into organized activity, a people who had faced threats before and knew how to respond. Women packed essentials while men prepared weapons and horses. Children were gathered, the youngest and oldest loaded onto travas for the journey. Rebecca worked alongside Singing Bird, helping the elderly and infirm prepare for evacuation. As she secured a child's medicine bundle, she felt Tall Eagle's presence behind her. You should go with them, he said quietly. The high canyon will be safe. Rebecca turned to face him. No, I'm staying with you. The soldiers are your people. Not anymore, she interrupted, the certainty in her voice surprising even herself. My place is here now, with the Apache. Her eyes held his. With you. Something shifted in Tall Eagle's expression. A barrier falling away. A decision made. He reached out his hand, gently touching her cheek in a gesture more intimate than any they had shared before. Since morning sky died, I walked alone between two worlds, the living and the spirit world, he said softly. Now you walk between two worlds, Apache and white. Perhaps the Creator sent you so neither of us walks alone. Rebecca covered his hand with hers. I've made my choice. The moment hung between them, fragile and precious amid the chaos of evacuation. Then Tall Eagle lowered his head and kissed her. Not a tentative gesture, but one of certainty and claiming. When they separated, his dark eyes held both tenderness and resolve. Then we face what comes together. As twilight descended, the evacuation was nearly complete. Rebecca stood with Tall Eagle at the village edge, watching the last group of elders and children disappear into the protective shadows of the canyon path. In the distance, dust clouds on the horizon signaled the approach of cavalry from Fort Grant. They will be here by morning, Tall Eagle observed grimly. Rebecca clutched her medicine pouch, now containing both the carved wooden horse from her father and the eagle feather from Tall Eagle, symbols of the two worlds that had shaped her. Then we have until morning to find a way to stop this war. Dawn painted the eastern sky with streaks of crimson and gold, as Rebecca and Chief Tall Eagle watched the cavalry approach. 50 soldiers in blue uniforms, led by an officer whose insignia identified him as Captain James Wilson. Behind them rode Samuel Blackwood, his satisfaction visible even at a distance. I know that officer, Rebecca said suddenly. Captain Wilson. He served with my uncle in the Illinois Volunteers. He visited our home back east when I was a child. Tall Eagle studied her face. Is he a man who will listen to truth? I believe he might be, Rebecca replied, hope kindling. But I'll need to reach him before Blackwood can interfere. Tall Eagle considered this, his expression grave. It is dangerous. Blackwood will not allow his plans to be disrupted easily. It's our best chance, Rebecca insisted. Better than bloodshed. After a moment's deliberation, Tall Eagle nodded. I trust your judgment. He removed his knife and cut a strip of white cloth from his shirt, then tied it to a branch. Take this. Approach slowly. In the open, Rebecca's hand found his, their fingers intertwining briefly. If this fails, it will not fail, he interrupted with quiet certainty. Your spirit is strong. Your words are true. These things have power. She kissed him quickly, then mounted the horse he had prepared for her. As she rode toward the approaching cavalry, the white flag held high above her head, Rebecca felt oddly calm. The path before her was clear at last, a bridge between worlds. Captain Wilson called a halt when he spotted her approaching. Through her improvised spyglass, Rebecca could see Blackwood's angry gestures, but the captain kept his hand raised, ordering his men to hold position. "I am Rebecca Mitchell," she called when she was within earshot. "Daughter of Thomas Mitchell of Cottonwood Creek Settlement. I request parley with Captain Wilson." The captain rode forward to meet her, his weathered face registering surprise as he recognized her. "Miss Mitchell, your father said you were taken by the Apache." "Not taken, Captain. Given. And then treated with honor rather than cruelty." She lowered her flag slightly. "I must speak with you urgently, before more blood is shed based on lies." Wilson's eyes narrowed. "Serious accusation, Miss Mitchell. With serious evidence to support it," she countered. "Will you hear me?" Blackwood spurred his horse forward. "Captain, this woman has been living among savages for weeks. She's clearly been corrupted, possibly enchanted by their heathen ways. The lady requested parley under flag of truce." Wilson replied coolly. "Military protocol dictates I hear her out." To Rebecca he added, "You have 5 minutes, Miss Mitchell." Rebecca spoke quickly, outlining Blackwood's scheme, the poisoned water, the manufactured incidents, his true interest in the gold deposits in Apache territory. As she spoke, she could see doubt creeping into Wilson's expression. "These are serious allegations," he said, when she finished. "Do you have proof?" "My father has copies of correspondence between Blackwood and Eastern investors," Rebecca replied, "and there are Apache witnesses to the water poison." "Apache testimony isn't admissible in any court," Blackwood interjected smugly. "Perhaps not," came a new voice. "But mine would be." Thomas Mitchell rode forward from the direction of the settlement, his rifle across his saddle. Rebecca's heart leapt at the sight of her father. "Mitchell," Captain Wilson acknowledged, "you have something to add to your daughter's claims?" "I do." Thomas Mitchell produced a folded document from his coat. "This is a copy of Blackwood's agreement with Boston investors. It specifically mentions acquiring the contested Apache lands for their gold deposits." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You broke into my office." "I did what was necessary to prevent a massacre," Thomas replied steadily. Captain Wilson took the document, his expression growing darker as he read. "Mr. Blackwood, it appears you've been less than truthful about the nature of the Apache threat. They're savages," Blackwood sputtered. "They've been raiding." "No confirmed raids have occurred," Wilson interrupted. "According to my own scouts, I found that curious when I received your urgent request for military intervention." As the standoff continued, Rebecca noticed movement on the ridge behind them. Chief Tall Eagle had appeared, alone and unarmed, a powerful statement of his willingness to seek peace. "Captain Wilson," Rebecca said, "may I present Chief Tall Eagle of the Chiricahua Apache. He comes in peace, to speak for his people." Wilson's eyebrows rose. "An Apache chief coming forward unarmed? That's unprecedented. He believes, as I do, that bloodshed between our peoples serves no one," Rebecca explained, "except perhaps those who would profit from our mutual destruction." Her gaze locked with Tall Eagle's across the distance as he began walking steadily toward them, his hands empty, his dignity a palpable force. In that moment, standing between two worlds, Rebecca had never felt more certain of her place. The air seemed to crystallize with tension as Chief Tall Eagle approached. Captain Wilson's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, then deliberately relaxed, a gesture not lost on the Apache chief. "Captain James Wilson," Rebecca made the introduction, "Chief Tall Eagle of the Chiricahua Apache." The two men assessed each other with the measured caution of natural leaders. Finally, Wilson inclined his head slightly. "Chief," Tall Eagle returned the gesture with equal dignity. "Captain, presence here is unexpected," Wilson continued, glancing at his soldiers who watched the exchange with a mixture of curiosity and tension. "Most Apache leaders wouldn't approach a cavalry detachment alone. Most cavalry captains would not listen to truth when war is easier." Tall Eagle replied evenly. "Miss Mitchell believes you are different." Wilson's weathered face registered surprise at the chief's excellent English and thoughtful response. "I've seen enough unnecessary bloodshed in my career to prefer truth, however inconvenient." His gaze shifted briefly to Blackwood, who sat seething on his horse nearby. "This is absurd," Blackwood interjected, spurring his horse forward. "Captain, your orders are clear. The Apache have been raiding settlements, stealing livestock, threatening civilians." "Curious," Wilson replied coolly, "as my scouts found no evidence of such activities." He tapped the captain's insignia on his uniform. "This signifies that I command this detachment, Mr. Blackwood. Not you. I'll determine what actions are justified." Blackwood's face flushed with barely contained rage. "The territorial governor will hear about this insubordination. I'm certain he'll be particularly interested in this document as well," Wilson countered, holding up Thomas Mitchell's evidence, "especially the part about your investors expecting the Apache to be conveniently removed from land with significant gold deposits." Rebecca watched the confrontation with growing hope. Captain Wilson was clearly a man of principle, one who valued truth over expediency. But Blackwood was not finished. "You'd take the word of an Apache-loving traitor and her savage," he glanced contemptuously at Tall Eagle, "protector over a respected businessman. The Settlement Council appointed me acting marshal. I speak with their authority."
"You'd take the word of an Apache-loving traitor and her savage—" He glanced contemptuously at Tall Eagle, "protector over a respected businessman. The Settlement Council appointed me acting marshal. I speak with their authority." "Not all of the council agreed," Thomas Mitchell corrected, joining them. "Some of us were coerced by threats to our families and livelihoods." As the confrontation intensified, Rebecca became aware of movement in the distance, more riders approaching from the direction of Cottonwood Creek. To her surprise, she recognized several settlement elders among them. "It appears we have more witnesses arriving," Captain Wilson observed. Blackwood turned, his expression shifting from confidence to alarm, as he recognized the approaching settlers. "What are they doing here?" "I sent word about your plans," Thomas explained. "Not everyone in the settlement wants war with the Apache." The settlement elders reined in their horses, forming an unexpected addition to the gathering. Among them was the blacksmith, the storekeeper, and 3 of the oldest homesteaders, men and women whose opinions carried weight in the community. "Captain Wilson," the blacksmith addressed the officer, "we've come to speak against this military action. Blackwood doesn't represent the true wishes of Cottonwood Creek." Blackwood's composure finally cracked. "You fools! Do you know what this land is worth? The gold in that valley could make us all rich." "Gold?" Wilson's eyebrows rose. "You failed to mention that in your request for military intervention." "That's because there is no gold," Fastknife's voice called as he emerged from concealment, holding something in his hand. "Only this." He tossed a small object to the ground between them, a nugget of fool's gold, its brassy gleam obvious in the morning light. "My people have known of this yellow rock for generations," Tall Eagle explained. "It shines like gold but holds no value. We call it the Deceiver." Blackwood's face went ashen. "That's not possible," my assayer confirmed. "Your assayer was paid to tell you what you wanted to hear," Thomas Mitchell interjected. "Just as you've been telling the settlement what you thought they wanted to hear about the Apache." The revelation hung in the air like the aftermath of a thunderclap. Captain Wilson's expression hardened as he reassessed the situation. "Mr. Blackwood," he said formally, "I believe we need to continue this discussion under more official circumstances. Consider yourself detained pending investigation of potential fraud and incitement to violence." As Wilson signaled 2 of his men to take Blackwood into custody, the businessman's control finally shattered, completely. With a roar of rage, he drew a concealed pistol from his coat. "If I can't have the land, no one will," he shouted, aiming not at Wilson or the soldiers, but at Chief Tall Eagle, the living symbol of his thwarted ambitions. Rebecca saw his intention in the split second before he fired. Without conscious thought, she threw herself forward, directly into the path of the bullet. The gunshot cracked through the morning air. Rebecca felt a searing pain across her upper arm as the bullet grazed her flesh before she collided with Chief Tall Eagle, knocking them both to the ground. Chaos erupted. Soldiers restrained Blackwood, wrenching the pistol from his hand. Apache warriors emerged from concealment, arrows nocked but not yet fired. Captain Wilson bellowed orders, struggling to maintain control of the volatile situation. "Hold!" Thomas Mitchell's voice rose above the tumult. "No more violence. My daughter is hurt." The declaration cut through the tension. All eyes turned to where Rebecca lay, Chief Tall Eagle now kneeling protectively beside her, his hand pressed against her bleeding arm. "I'm all right," Rebecca insisted, though the pain was intense. "It's just a graze." Tall Eagle's face was a mask of controlled fury as he looked from her wound to Blackwood, now restrained between two soldiers. For a terrible moment, Rebecca feared he might order his warriors to attack despite everything they had worked for. "Tall Eagle," she whispered, catching his hand. "Don't let him win by starting the war he wanted." The chief's dark eyes met hers, his expression softening. "You risked your life for mine, as you would have done for me," she replied simply. Captain Wilson approached, his face grim. "Miss Mitchell, we need to tend that wound immediately." To Chief Tall Eagle, he added with newfound respect, "My apologies, Chief. Blackwood will face military justice for this attempted murder. Apache justice would be swifter," Tall Eagle replied, though the deadly edge had left his voice. Thomas Mitchell knelt beside his daughter, his weathered face lined with worry. "Rebecca, my brave, foolish girl." Singing Bird appeared as if from nowhere, her medicine pouch already open. "I tend to her," she stated firmly, pushing both military surgeon and concerned father aside with surprising authority. "Apache medicine best for wounds." As Singing Bird worked laps her, applying a poultice of herbs that immediately eased the burning pain, Rebecca became aware of the unique tableau they presented. Apache and settlers, cavalry and warriors, all watching with shared concern as an elderly Apache woman treated a white woman who had been wounded protecting an Apache chief. "Perhaps," Captain Wilson observed quietly, "this is what peace looks like." Once Rebecca's wound was bandaged, Tall Eagle helped her to her feet. She stood between him and her father, physically bridging the gap between their worlds. "What happens now?" she asked, addressing both Wilson and Tall Eagle. The captain removed his hat, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Officially, I return to Fort Grant and report that the alleged Apache threat was fabricated by Mr. Blackwood for personal gain. Unofficially," he glanced at the settlement elders and the Apache warriors, "I believe the people of this territory have an opportunity to forge a different path than the one we've seen played out so many times before." "The water rights," Thomas Mitchell suggested. "That's where we should start. The Apache know the land better than we do. If we could share knowledge about irrigation, about conserving water during drought." A tentative discussion began, with Rebecca translating cultural concepts when necessary. The settlement elders spoke of their needs: grazing land for cattle, timber for building. The Apache, through Tall Eagle, explained their seasonal movements, the sacred sites that must remain undisturbed, the hunting grounds essential to their survival. "We could establish trade," the storekeeper proposed. "Regular meetings like many tribes have with other settlements, and return stolen horses." Fast Knife added pointedly, though with less hostility than before. As the conversation continued, Rebecca felt a small weight in her pocket, the gold nugget that had nearly cost so many lives. She held it up, letting the sunlight catch its brassy gleam. "This isn't real gold," she said, "but what we're creating here is more valuable than any metal. Understanding, respect, peace." That evening, as soldiers escorted a sullen Blackwood back to Fort Grant for trial, representatives from both the settlement and the Apache gathered around a common fire. There they crafted the beginnings of an agreement, not perfect, not without compromise on both sides, but founded on truth, rather than deception. Rebecca sat between her father and Chief Tall Eagle, her bandaged arm a reminder of how close they had come to tragedy. The chief's hand found hers in the firelight, his touch conveying everything words could not. "You once told me I was a bridge between worlds," she said softly. "I never imagined it would lead here." "The best paths are those we cannot see when we begin the journey," he replied, his dark eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "But we know them by the peace they bring to our hearts when we walk them." Thomas Mitchell watched their exchange with a mixture of sadness and acceptance. When Rebecca met his gaze, he nodded slowly, a father's blessing for a daughter who had found her place in a world he hadn't expected, but could no longer deny. 1 year later, the flat rocks by the creek crossing,
once a tense boundary between two hostile worlds, had transformed into something new. A small trading post stood there now, its wooden structure a collaborative effort between Apache craftsman and settler carpenter. Today, it was adorned with juniper boughs and wild flowers, the scent of sage and pinyon smoke drifting on the spring breeze. Rebecca stood before the small mirror, in what had once been Singing Bird's dwelling, now her own. The elderly medicine woman had moved in with her niece, insisting that Rebecca and Tall Eagle would need the space for what comes next. The old woman's knowing smile had made Rebecca blush even then. Her reflection showed a woman changed by the year's experiences, her skin sun-darkened, her auburn hair longer and adorned with small beaded ornaments, her green eyes holding a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly where she belonged. She wore a dress unlike any other in the territory, the bodice and sleeves of fine settler's cotton that her father had traded for, the skirt and decorative elements of traditional Apache design. Singing Bird and the other women had spent weeks creating the marriage blanket that now lay folded across Rebecca's bed, its intricate pattern telling the story of two worlds united. "It is time," White Dove called softly from outside. Rebecca stepped into the sunlight where a small procession of Apache women waited to escort her. As they approached the trading post, she saw the gathering already assembled, Apache tribal members, intermingled with settlers from Cottonwood Creek, their previous boundaries softened by a year of cautious but growing cooperation. Chief Tall Eagle waited at the center, magnificent in his ceremonial attire, the eagle feather in his headband catching the light. Beside him stood Thomas Mitchell, still sometimes uncomfortable in Apache company, but steadfast in his support of his daughter's choice. The ceremony that followed honored both traditions, an Apache blessing of the union, followed by words from the settlement's preacher. When Tall Eagle placed the marriage blanket around both their shoulders, drawing Rebecca into its embrace with him, the symbolic joining of their worlds was complete. "Two streams becoming one river," Tall Eagle said softly, for her ears alone, "stronger together than apart." The celebration continued into the evening, with food and music from both cultures. Rebecca moved between groups, still sometimes translating concepts and customs, still bridging understanding where gaps remained. Her father approached as twilight softened the landscape. "Your mother would have been proud," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Not because of who you married, but because of how you've stayed true to your heart. Will you be comfortable in your new cabin?" Rebecca asked. Thomas Mitchell had finally accepted the Apache invitation to build a small home near the trading post, where he would help manage the growing commerce between the communities. "I'm an old dog learning new tricks," he admitted with a wry smile, "but I find I sleep better, knowing my grandchildren will grow up in a place where both sides of their heritage are honored." As night fell, Rebecca and Tall Eagle stood together on a small rise, overlooking both the Apache village and the distant lights of Cottonwood Creek. The marriage blanket wrapped around their shoulders against the evening chill. They gazed at the territory that had once divided them but now united them. "Look," Tall Eagle said, pointing to where a new path was visible between the two communities, no longer a cautious boundary but a well-traveled road of cooperation. "Not your world, not my world, our world." Rebecca leaned into his strength, her hand finding his beneath the blanket. "Our world," she agreed, "for all who come after us."